Struggles, trials, we all have them. All face them. Come many different ways and forms, shapes, maybe even experiences. All have them right now, probably. You probably leave the service, you'll probably find something. There'll be some kind of trial to be waiting on you. It might be something at work that you have. Or maybe we'll say, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach you're going through right now, and that person in authority just seems to be abusing their authority. You're not being treated fairly. You're getting the wrong end of the stick. Going through that trial. Or maybe it's with a colleague or a fellow student, a teammate, a peer, and they just make life hard. It's a trial, and you got to see it every single day. Or maybe it's relationally. You want to be a good friend. You're trying to be a good friend. You're extending yourself out with your time, your words, your deeds, and you just don't feel like it's ever reciprocated. And you wonder if you're the only one on this seesaw, and you're just kind of waiting for somebody. When are we going to level this thing out? Or maybe it's just like a sense of injustice. Again, from some kind of a authority, or maybe it's been some kind of systemic issue. And finally, maybe if even just something within yourself, you know that you tend to be a timid person, you want to be bold. You're stingy, you wish you were more generous. You're hot-headed, you wish you were patient, you wish you were kind and gentle. You're not so loving, you wish you were a lot more loving. These are all trials, these maybe struggles that we have on a regular basis. The question is, how are you going to endure through them? But it's not enough just to endure. Fact is, you can get through any of those situations, but then you can actually become a victim to the trial, to the struggle. You end up becoming vengeful. You end up becoming cynical, hardened by the situation. And it's not a win. So the real question for us is, how do I get through these trials, these struggles that come to me on a regular basis and still maintain a heart? So I think what we're really all looking for, get to that in a second, got on myself. It's this guy, Andrew Delbanco, in his book, he says, The Real American Dream. He says, a meditation on hope. He says, as human beings, we have all our actions and maybe experiences, and we need them to culminate to where they actually make some kind of a story like they're going someplace. Like we kind of feel like, what are we here for? He says, we must imagine some end to life that transcends our own tiny allotment of days and hours. If we were to keep at bay the dim, back of the mind suspicion that we're adrift in an absurd sea. He said, we all have these we're going through trials and struggles. I'm just trying to get through them, but how? How am I going to get through them? And it's not going to taint me. I'm not going to get hardened. He's saying you got to have some kind of story. Another way of saying is you need hope. But not all hope is created equal. Specifically, it matters where you're going to ground that hope. It needs to be, is it going to be in a spot to where can your life situations, can other people, can they come in and beat on that hope? Can they erase that hope? Can they take that hope away? Hope deferred is a tragedy of the heart, the Proverbs say. Or is there a spot you can actually place your hope? It can be grounded in a spot that it can't be beat on. People can try to, but it doesn't put a dent in it. And it can sustain you. Because this is what we're looking for. We're looking for some kind of hope that can enable us to endure any situation, no matter what comes our way, and still maintain a heart. Well, we're going to be looking at passage today, Mark 14:53 through 15:21. I'm just going to read the last part of 14. But we're going to see Jesus is going to be going through trials and struggles. And this whole letter, obviously written by Mark, but from the standpoint of Peter, and it's thought right now by commentators that Peter's probably in a Roman jail cell, probably at the end of the 50s or the 60s. And this has immediate consequences just for Roman Christians at the time. He's going to be talking about Jesus' trial. They're going to see their brother, their hero, Peter. You went through trials and you failed. And we're all going to fail, but how do I actually get through it? And not be hardened, but keep a heart, and I don't have to keep on failing over and over and over again. How do I win? Basically, how do I endure? Where's my hope going to be found that I can endure with a heart? So this has these trials that Jesus is going through. I think we're going to kind of find a little bit of the hope. Where can we ground this? They're looking for it. We're looking for it. So let me just read for us this passage here. I said I'll just read the last part of 14, from 53 to the close. They led Jesus away to the high priest and all the chief priests, the elders and the scribes assembled. Peter followed at a distance, right into the high priest's courtyard. He was sitting with the servants, warming himself by the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they could not find any. For many were giving testimony against him, and testimonies did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We have heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made by hands.' Yet their testimony did not agree even on this." Then the high priest stood up before them all and questioned Jesus. "Don't you have anything to answer to what these men are testifying against you?" But he kept silent, and he didn't answer. Again the high priest questioned him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus. "And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his robes and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision?" They all condemned him as deserving death. Then some of them began to spit on him, blindfold him, beat him, saying, "Prophesy." Temple servants also took him and slapped him. While Peter was in the courtyard below, one of the high priest's maidservants came. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man of Nazareth." But he denied it. I do not know or understand what you're talking about." Then he went out of the entryway, and a rooster crowed. When the maidservant saw him again, she began to tell those standing nearby, "This man is one of them." But he denied it again. After a little while those who were standing around said to Peter again, "You certainly are one of them, since you're also a Galilean." Then he started to curse and swear, "I don't even know this man you're talking about." Immediately a rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered when Jesus had spoken the word to him. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. So we see Jesus enduring some trials here. He has these folks that are in a form of authority with the scribes, and they're denying him justice. He's being treated unfairly here. He's also going to see the same thing with Pilate. See, Rome at the time, they had this motto that they were known for. Pax Romana, peace of Rome. And this was just kind of well known because it was such a huge kingdom at the time, and you can't get to places as quick, then as you do now, obviously. So how are you going to keep peace all across this immense territory? Well, usually they just use brute force. There are no riots. If there is, we're going to send in the army, and boom, we're going to squash you out. But in a sense, we're looking for peace, but this is supposed to be, where's the peace of Rome? And Jesus is going to be denied that peace. Pilate's going to offer a false peace. There's going to be a riot that's about to start up if they release Jesus. They said, "I will deny him justice so I can just maintain the pseudo-peace." So you see, injustice is served up to Jesus. This is a trial of the severest kind, let alone the sheer fact that his friend is going to betray him. How's he going to endure this? Still keep a heart. We look at verse 62. The question has been posed, "Are you the Messiah?" He says, "I am." But he doesn't leave it there. He says, "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power." That's a reference to Psalm 110:1. It's a prophecy about the Messiah where God says, "At my right hand, seated at my right hand while I make your enemies a footstool." So it's like, I'm going to raise you up. And then he closes with this prophecy, "And coming with the clouds of heaven." Well, this comes from the prophet Daniel, and I just want to read just a few passages from this, just to kind of give us a little bit of context, because I believe it's within this. This is some of the grounding. This is a piece of the grounding that this hope is able to be secure in, and it would be sustained. So in this passage in chapter 7 of Daniel's seeing this vision that God has put in his mind, and it says that God is stirring up the sea, and all of a sudden he brings up these 4 massive creatures out of the sea, and they represent 4 kingdoms. Which is interesting. It says God did that. These are not man-made kingdoms. God's bringing it to fruition. Well, the first three, Daniel uses this language, he just uses them to describe, they look like animals to him. Well, the last one says it's terrible. It's so big, I don't really have words to describe what it's like other than the fact it's really big, it's really strong, and it's got iron teeth. It's just devouring everybody. Well, what's getting at is the fact that these are extremely powerful kingdoms. They represent Babylon, Persia, Greece, and finally Rome. Now, they've had massive, the shortest kingdom being Babylon, about 100 years. Rome, about 500 years. Put that in context, I think here in the States, I think we're around like 270. So a little more than halfway home. I mean, Rome, these are major kingdoms. Well, in the midst of this, as Daniel is seeing this vision of these massive, impressive kingdoms, he sees another vision. It says, as I kept watch and thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white like snow, and the hair of his head like whitest wool. His throne was flaming fire. Its wheels were blazing fire. And then he starts to talk about on this last beast that he can't. I was thinking about this, like let's say that a new season was started, a 5th season. And it doesn't look like any of the other 4 seasons, but you need to describe it to the rest of us. How are you going to describe it if you don't have language to paint it? It's going to be a lot of likes. You're going to use similes. So instead, there's this major beast, and it had things that look like horns and eyes on it. And well, he says, during this time, as I watched, the sound of the arrogant words of one of the horns on this beast, it kept yapping. As I continued watching, the beast was killed and its body was destroyed. Skipping down. As I continued watching in the night visions, suddenly one like a son of man was coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was escorted before him. He was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, so that those of every people, nation, language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. I think part of the reason that actually Jesus actually be fortified in this time, that his hope is grounded, is that it's grounded in a kingdom that we can't touch. He's in the midst of this Roman Empire, a massive Roman Empire, and he's being subjected to the scribes, the elders, who have their authority. And that passage in Daniel says, you guys, you'll have your time. You'll have your time in the sun. But my time's coming. He has a hope that's secured that nothing can mar, nothing can dent. So I think part of it is he's able to endure this, maintain his heart, partly because though you're an authority and you're abusing your authority, one day my kingdom's going to come and all the wrongs will be righted. Perfect justice will go out. There will be no more injustices. Only the right ruling. I think this is partly why he's even able to endure the pain of seeing his friend, Peter, deny him. It's not stated here, but in Luke, it says after that 3rd time that Peter denies him, it says Jesus looked and he saw him, they made eye contact. He says, you just did it. You just denied me. But it's okay because in a sense, it's like my security. I'm living for a kingdom that can't be broken this side. Your effects, it can hurt me, but it can't break me. Well, you may say, that's all good and well, but what good is that going to do you right in the here and now? He's under trial. He's really struggling. Well, if you remember from last week, as we were talking about the prayer of Gethsemane, or maybe the battle of Gethsemane, when Jesus goes in, he starts to pray fervently, Lord, would you please? He goes in there. He doesn't want to go to the cross. He don't want to endure the pain. He wants there to be a plan B. But Luke records that during this time, though this heavenly kingdom, it doesn't have like an earthly, presence in a sense of like a physical location. This kingdom's got long arms. It's got some outposts. It's got resources. This heavenly kingdom is able to send down a minister, an angel to Jesus and strengthen him. And so though Jesus did not get the answer of, is there another way? He has the resources. He is living. His hope is grounded in a kingdom that has resources to get him through the trial, through the struggle. And so hope it can't be busted. Well, I want to look at this just and maybe in contrast with maybe we're seeing our brother Peter in this. As I might say, as you're looking at Peter, I think his hope is grounded this side of eternity, more in his own kingdom. It's been stated many times from this pulpit about how Peter, the rest of the disciples, and if you're a Jew at this time, you're looking for a kingdom to come in and deliver you from Rome. And they're saying, Jesus, he's the freedom fighter, we're in good shape. And as Peter, he's in a good position to where he's going to rise as the waters rise with Jesus. But now all of a sudden, he's having to face the fact that his hope is being dashed. There's my leader, and he's ought to be killed. My hope that's been grounded in my kingdom, it's been hammered. It's been squelched. Now what do? Despair. He didn't have the resources to get through this trial. As one commentator says, he gets in the pinch, and he's saving his own skin. What I want us to look at is if we were to go from that motto of I'm going to have my own kingdom, how would we actually go through these different trials that Jesus had? Can it be sustained? Because again, Andrew Delbanco, as I quoted earlier, he says this. He says, just as this is an American, because really we can resonate with Peter. Looking out for himself, living for me, personal kingdom. We're promoted. This is an American manifesto. We've all heard this, no doubt. At the end of the day, you got to do what works for you. You just got to do what makes you happy. You've heard that, right? There's not a chance you've not heard that. If you're an American, you've heard that. You've said it, you believe it, you're probably still operating on it to some extent. It's just the water that we swim in. That is the manifesto as a good American. Well, how does that work out just as far as like securing our hope? Delbanco says, he said, we do not see serving God as being more important than self-actualization. That's like my kingdom. We do not consider claims on religion or national loyalty to ever overrule our pursuit of individual freedom and happiness. Our hope now is for individual freedom to pursue our own private ideas of good and discover our authentic selves. Let's just say this, that you are people in authority in your life, they're abusing that authority. And this is where your hope is secured. It's in your own kingdom. How are you going to get through that? Eventually, it's going to be easy to become spiteful, revengeful. Let's just say you actually have a really good job. Are you just going to keep bouncing around and you have to run away? That's not fair to you. But what resources do you have that you're going to be able to endure this and still keep a heart? Or what about you're just kind of pouring out your life for all the friends around you? You want to be involved. You want them to be involved. You think there's some kind of blessing to this. We talked last week about how we cannot realize the fullness or even probably the part of the new covenant if we're not in community together. Well, you keep trying to actually get community together, but it never seems to be reciprocated. If your hope to endure these trials, because it is a trial, if you feel like your efforts are not being reciprocated, it's a struggle. But if your hope is grounded in, at the end of the day, you got to do what works for you. You're eventually just going to back away. Start to put up a wall. We can have some superficial friendships. I used to have beer buddies, and that's like, hey, we'll talk, The next day, I don't really know you. It's just shallow. There's nothing really there. We don't have like rich relationship. Talk sports, just keep it shallow. But is that what we're looking for? Or let's just say there's some kind of injustice. I remember one time I was going down, if you're familiar, if you're from Georgia, 316. Speed limit's 55. I had my cruise control on 57. I'm pulled over, and they said, you're doing 65. I said, officer, that's not possible. I had my cruise control on at 57. He said, well, it's probably broken. It's like, how am I supposed to know that then? Like, it's like I can only go what it says I'm going to go. It's like, well, sometimes, if you go up and down hills, it fluctuates. It's like, this road's flat. It's like there's nothing. Now, how does that, if my hope's like I'm going to endure this trial, how's that going to be secured when my whole view is I got to do what makes me happy? That didn't make me happy. That was unjust. And some of you have had much worse injustices that were thrown your way. Much worse. How are you going to go about that and not become hardened? How are you going to go about that in a political realm? Here's what's going to happen. I'm the good side, you're the enemy. You're the demon. What it looks like is our country. This is the American Manifesto. At the end of the day, you got to do what works for you. How does that work out with 400 million people all doing, you got to do what works for you? Boom! Just constantly. I like you until you get in my way, and now you're a barrier, I need you out of my life. And I would say if right now maybe you're struggling with, do I believe this? Do I believe this Christian faith? That this is not what you want. Having your hope just placed in your own little kingdom, you don't have the resources to get you through trials, struggles, and you not just be blown up in the process. It's not what you're looking for. It's not the economy you want to, the kind of civilization you want to be a part of. We read stories about it all around the world and probably more and more our own country. That when we function like this, it's chaos. Social media has made secret things known. Rudeness. You said something that I don't like, so now all of a sudden, I think you're a hot dog head looking fool or something like that. It's like dog, what happened? More than what I got. It's like but it's just you got in my way, so now I got to cut you down. This is not the answer that you're looking for. But I would now submit to you for the professing Christian, this is not even on the table. We can't live this way. Pastor Lucius, he says, his life scripture, he says, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. This life I live in the flesh, I'll now live for him who loves me and gave himself up for me. What that implies is if I live for myself, that means that's fine, but you're stuck with your kingdom. And your hope is very vulnerable. It can be dashed by anybody that just has more power and pull than you do. But if I'm living for Jesus, he gets it all. It's his kingdom. But man, it's so much more appealing. It can't be broken. But there tends to be, and we can see it in our own hearts, because you think about this, you've heard the statement before, I like Jesus, I just don't like this Christian. Or a lot of Christians say certain things and they do another thing. Best case scenario is we're not perfect. It's like, hey, you don't do what you say either. That you just lower the bar so far. It's like, well, Worst case scenario is Jesus is your God when it's convenient for you. When it's not convenient for you, you're your own God. And here becomes the conviction. As Jesus says, you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father. And there's more than one way to deny him. It's not just with our words like Peter did when he says, I don't even know the man. You notice he didn't even mention his name. Jesus never heard of him. But every time, let's just say there's an abuse, boss does something, your coach, a colleague, a friend, there's spite in there, and you just try to, some way, you're just going to harden yourself so you can kind of get in for the fight. It's a denial of the faith. Is this not how Jesus has called you? Are you living for you, your kingdom, or his? This friendship's not working out. I keep trying, I'm trying, no one's reciprocating. Just pull back. You've denied him. I will demonize the other political party. And there is no doubt in our systems we have issues, but we need a full heart so we can go in and be a part of the solution and not just chuck bombs, because all of a sudden now you really got an issue. It's just a power play. It's destruction. It's not safe. So how do we do this? Because at the end of the day, it's like, man, we're looking for some kind of hope that's going to enable us to meet anything and still have a heart. But sometimes it can feel very powerless when I'm landing my hope in God's kingdom, because he may not do something for me today. Well, let me read you just something like a picture. This is just from a story of the possibility that's laid before us of living for God's kingdom and the security that's found there, the hope that can be secured and that actually can get us through trials, it can get us through struggles and maintain our heart. Tim Keller, in his book, Making Sense of God in Postmodern Era, he's quoting Dr. Howard Thurman, African-American scholar, lived in the mid-1900s, and he's at Harvard in 1947. And he gave a famous lecture on the meaning of, quote, Negro spirituals. I asked all the pastors, can I actually, as a white man, say that in quotes? They assured me that I can. So I just, again, said that in the last service, just want you to know. So Thurman engaged the criticism that the African-American spirituals or too otherworldly, too filled with references to to heaven, to crowns, thrones, robes the singers would wear when Jesus returned. The argument was that such beliefs made people docile and submissive. On the contrary, Thurman argued, this sung faith served to deepen our slaves' capacity for endurance. The spirituals encompassed the Christian belief in a final judgment, a day on which all wrongs would be made right. It also included a belief in a personal immortality and the reunion with loved ones forever. Out of these doctrines, the conviction grew that this is the kind of universe that cannot deny ultimately the demands of love and longing. Uniting with loved ones turned finally on the hope of immortality, and the issue of immortality turned on God. Therefore, God would make it right. At one point in his lecture, Thurman answers the objection, but we can't take all this sort of thing literally. Surely all this talk of crowns and heaven is symbolic. Here towards, if that is such, things were seen as mere symbols and not real. They could never have served to provide a life of hope to slaves when the prospects for improvement were so small. And he gives this illustration, said, imagine how ludicrous it would have been to sit down with a group of slaves in the early 1800s and say, there will never be a judgment day in which wrongdoing will be put right. There is no future world and life in which your desires will ever be satisfied. This life is all there is. When you die, you simply cease to exist. Our only real hope for a better world lies in improved social policy by which you'll never benefit from because you'll be dead. Now, with these things in mind, go out there, keep your head high, live a life of courage and love. Don't give in to despair. Good luck. This is the complete contrast of God's kingdom, the security of hope, and God's kingdom, the security of the lack of security of hope, and man's kingdom. So there's no way you go through such a heinous enterprise as slavery, and you can maintain hope that one day things are going to get better. How can I possibly still love someone, my enemy? How can I still pray? There's numerous accounts of slaves praying for their enemies, knowing the amazing hypocrisy of their owners using Bible to keep them down. You go through something like that, it's like, how in the world? You don't have the capacity in your own kingdom to have a heart. That has to harden you. It has to cause for revolt. Has to cause for fighting, hardness, revenge. But he's saying when you put your hope in something is secure, untarnished, can't be broken, it's the kingdom of God that is otherworldly. This has consequences for this world. Is that's the only way you're going to be able to have hope and endure these trials, these struggles, and still maintain your heart. And I believe that's an offer that is actually put before us. Now, I'll admit, I see it in my own heart. It is so difficult. I am an American. We have so much stuff. It's like just the material we consume. It's about me and my happiness. I get frustrated. I can't go play golf. It's like, give me a break. I'm playing with Julius, though. Hey. So, got that today. Don't rain on me. But it's just like it's like I'm so tied to what makes me happy. It doesn't provide hope. As soon as my plans are interrupted, I'm frustrated. I think you can resonate. But we live for Him. It makes a different kind of person. It makes a Christian. And I just want to close with a brother in the faith, St. Paul, who knew his share of trials, who knew friendships that broke apart, who didn't reciprocate their love back to him, had justice denied him, abused, people using authority in all kind of wrong ways, but yet was able to endure those trials of the heart. He says this to us: since we have been raised with Christ, set your sight on the realities. It's real, the realities of heaven, where Christ is seated in the place of honor at the right hand of God. Think on the things of heaven, not on the things of earth. For you have died to this life, but your real life is hidden with Christ in God. Let's pray.